The pandemic hitting minority-owned small businesses particularly hard. Recent studies suggesting 40% may permanently close their doors as owners struggle to secure the financing they need to stay afloat. Our next guest is the CEO of City First Bank of D.C., just announcing a merger, creating the largest Black-led bank and the first with assets over $1 billion. Brian Argrett joins us now. Brian, I want to get to the merger in just a moment, but I really think we cannot discuss this issue enough. The idea that the pandemic has just created these massive disparities with the Black community with regard to those small businesses. So since you are truly speaking with business owners every day, can you give us a sense as to what they're saying? What are some of the struggles that they're facing with regard to this pandemic that is creating such hardship for them to stay afloat right now?
Yes, good morning, and first of all, thank you for having me on. It really is heartbreaking as you led with the impact on communities of color, both African-American-led businesses, Latino-led businesses, and small business in general has been quite devastating. You mentioned 40% of African-American led businesses will shutter due to the pandemic. We have a similar statistic of about 32% with Latino and Latina-led businesses that will not reopen as a result of this pandemic. The stories are heartbreaking. They're individuals who are lacking the resources that they need to really bridge their businesses, lacking the access, lacking the liquidity. That's so critical during a time like this.
Access to capital is certainly an important feature here. Why has that access to capital been so difficult to come by? The PPP loans were designed to kind of bridge the gap there. There have been studies by the Fed showing that the Black communities did not have the same access to PPP loans as other communities. What can be done in Washington to really help this situation?
That's absolutely true. In fact, you mentioned the Federal survey. We've also seen surveys where 95% of the African-American owned businesses, Black-led businesses, were unable to access the PPP program. Now, I'll contrast that with our experience at City First Bank of D.C., where nearly 40%, we were a participant, obviously, in the Paycheck Protection or PPP program. 40% of the capital that we were able to provide was directed specifically and provided to businesses and nonprofits led and owned by people of color and African Americans.
Brian, at the same time, there have been some big players. I'm thinking of Costco on Friday, which joined an effort that Netflix actually seeded, which was to build an investment fund that would fuel Black-led, at least financial institutions in some community efforts. I just wonder, is the size of those dollars being felt? And is it a sign maybe that commitment from large companies has better sticking power than we've seen in the past?
Well, first I'd like to applaud all of those efforts, and we hope that there will be more coming forward. The size of the gap that is experienced, as we've been talking, by low and moderate income communities, communities of color, African-American communities, is substantial. It's systemic. It's historic. And so it does really require very intentioned, disciplined efforts and sustainable efforts to really close those gaps. So I applaud all of those efforts. We believe our move is also another one with two institutions that have long-standing histories, long-standing basis in the communities of Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., of delivering within these gaps. So communities of great potential, communities of great need, and quite frankly, it really takes that intentionality and that being of the community and being sustained in the community to close these gaps, to your question.
And Brian, in the intro, we mentioned the recent merger between Broadway Federal Bank and your own City First Bank, kind of a bi-coastal merger there, creating more scale for you all. How does that help you achieve your goal?
Well, first of all, it's a merger of equals between two strong financial institutions that have a long-standing history in their communities of closing this gap. And we believe together these institutions can do so even more strongly, providing more capital in the collective to really three key segments that we're focused on. Affordable housing, which is central and key in all urban areas, and particularly those high-cost urban areas such as Southern California, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. Secondly, the topic we've been talking about, small business, really support and financing of small business. And lastly, not lastly, but in third, also supporting nonprofits that are also working to shore up these very important communities of high potential.
Well, it's an interesting and important time to be doing a merger and extending your reach, so we appreciate you coming on and sharing those details with us. Brian, thank you. Over to you, Carl.
Absolutely. My pleasure.